What's up, y'all? I just took a nap, and today I decided, you know what? Let's do a react to some of these people that know and are very professional about the historical realism of Assassin's Creed series. Now, you got some people that, try to deem off, definitely when it comes to Shadows, that, it's just fiction, and you can tell that they don't know their history, and that they don't know that the Assassin's Creed series is very, very, very based off of a lot of historical realism and accuracy, and it's very important to the series. So in this video right here, we got Overly Sarcastic Productions. This guy knows his stuff. He's very professional. He's very nerdy, and I have to say this guy's very intelligent. He notices a lot of things. There's a lot of people like this in the world, including myself in different aspects in life. But when it comes to this type of stuff, this guy, he's very professional and I like it. So we're going to dive into this a little bit. And like I said, I plan on doing some Assassin's Creed games to cover some stuff so you guys can get the idea of how these games are built with the architecture, see how the development is going, and know that these developers could have done this because they are good enough to do this and they've been doing this for a while. Definitely Ubisoft Montreal, they should know better. But of course, when you have agendas pushed on you from suit and ties, that type of stuff will happen. So it's not a question of whether they can do it, it's a question of why they didn't do it. So let's go. And like I said, if you guys want me to do certain other games, you want to give me some codes or something, yeah, go ahead. I got a PlayStation, an Xbox, PC. I obviously have the Switch, but I don't want to do it on that because that's a lower quality machine. I would rather do it on my PC, to be honest with you. Like I said, my Series X, my PS5. You can hit me up on my Twitter or my Twitch and send me a message. Twitter, obviously, because you can just DM straight in there. It's right on my profile. You can find it through any of my videos. But let's dive right into it, y'all.
I cannot believe I'm saying this, but not only is the new Assassin's Creed pretty damn fun just as a game, the history on display here is astounding. For context, I've been playing these games since the very beginning, back with AC1. They got me excited about history in the first place, and I've made 4 whole videos discussing the historical realism of the recent games and the series as a whole. I have spent far too much time in my life thinking about how Assassin's Creed balances accuracy with realism, with game design, with audience excitement factor, and what that means for the historical experience they impart overall.
Did you see what he just said? Already, this guy knows his stuff.
Reviews of AC's tours of Egypt and Greece, the answer was pretty good, but a couple caveats, and for Valhalla, that fell to so hyper-sensationalized and anachronistic that it completely buries the things they actually got right. However, to my aforementioned surprise, Assassin's Creed Mirage, set in the great city of Baghdad during the golden age of Islam, pretty much nails the assignment. The world of this game is rich, charming, diverse, and impressively well-sourced. To see how, let's do some history. The first thing that struck me is how excited this game is about the setting, and that starts with something as simple as the logo design. At this point in the lore, the assassins are called the Hidden Ones, and Mirage's insignia features mirrored Arabic calligraphy spelling out the hidden. That's cool as hell, but more than a cute little visual flair or Easter egg, this shows a level of care and enthusiasm for Islamic art and culture that was distinctly absent from Ubisoft's first take on the setting in the original Assassin's Creed. And there are plenty.
So you see right there, just like you said, the calligraphy, the art, the design to the Islamic culture and everything, it's on point.
Of comparisons to be made between how Mirage handles its historical material versus how prior games did it, but for the purpose of this video, I'll be abundantly generous to the older games and just discuss Mirage on its own terms. And that brings us to the city. Mirage throws back to older AC games by focusing entirely on one urban environment, specifically the great Abbasid capital of Baghdad. It was purpose-built by Caliph al-Mansur in 762, shortly after founding their new imperial dynasty, so it's just shy of a century old when our hero Basim gets all stabby in 861. Baghdad was originally planned and built as a round city, but it very quickly grew beyond the scope of the round walls, so by the 800s, Baghdad had neighborhoods on every side and even on the far bank of the Tigris River. Mirage sadly does not provide us with East Tigris content, which is a shame, as there were at least 3 bridges across the river in this period, and even the game's collectible map knows better than to commit East Tigris erasure.
So we see how historically accurate that is by looking at the map. Like you said, there was a couple areas they didn't add in, but for the most part, it's very, very accurate to the realism of Baghdad and to the Islam culture, like big time. And we see the design, like you said, the round city, everything. It's all there.
I joke, but I'm honestly not too fussed about it because unlike basically every other setting Assassin's Creed has ever tackled, recreating Baghdad is made more complicated by the city being completely lost. In 1258 it was sacked and flattened by the Mongols, so textual and cartographic records are the only thing we have to go by. Lacking nearly any surviving architecture from the city in the period, the team at Ubisoft had to get a little creative, but their vision of Baghdad is well informed by contemporary cities elsewhere in the Islamic world as well as other surviving Abbasid works in places like Samarra. It's a kind of guesswork, but it's grounded in the sources that we do have, and this allows for a little bit of leeway in what exactly gets placed where. For instance, the legendary Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, was originally the Caliph's personal library in the late 700s before opening up into a public scholarly institution, so it probably would have been in the Round City near the palace, but here in Mirage, it's outside the Round Walls in the Abbasiyah district, with the intent being that every district has its own feel. Abbasiyah gets characterized as the Scholars District, while Harbia is the Industrial District with the big prison, and Karch is the Merchants District with the main bazaar. And of course, the utterly palatial Round City is the administrative center of Baghdad. Outside lies the wilderness with barren sands, lush farmlands, oases, settlements, Kadwansarai way stations, and a whole last ziggurat. The distribution of districts and landmarks in and around Baghdad is rather gamey, but it makes sense. And again, when the city's lost, we can't strictly call it wrong. There are a handful of similar things that are incorrect or anachronistic, but never dip into being dishonest and pretending that one thing is actually something else entirely. For instance,
So, like he said right there, I mean, this is as historic as you could possibly get. And they did work and see what's going on in it today and worked with people there to pretty much make it as accurate as possible, and they're not being dishonest intellectually. And remember, this is what they recently did. So we could see who did, let's go see who did Assassin's Creed Mirage. Because sometimes they put other developers on the game. Okay, so the developers for this was Ubisoft. Right here, Boudreaux. But they're in France. They support. They serve as a support studio and collaborates with the Annecy, Paris, and Montpellier studios on their future titles. The studio is headed by Julien Mayoux. You can see it's a little bit of French. But like I said, the main Ubisoft is a big company. They have a lot of parts of Ubisoft, as you see. We can really see this. See all these Ubisofts. This is the main people who do Assassin's Creed, by the way. Prince of Persia is Montreal, and we know about that. They're the ones behind Shadows. So it's good to know who the developers are if you go in and see, as you see right here. Okay, yeah, we got Quebec doing this right here. They're French as well, though, and Canadian. But yeah, usually the main people that are doing it is Montreal. But you know, they can all interwork with each other. So it's good to know that. But if we go down here, we can see that they did Freedom Cry, Syndicate, Jack the Ripper. And that's about it, which is interesting because, like I said, if we go to Ubisoft Montreal, they're the ones that started the Assassin's Creed series, and they did most of them. So we could go all the way down here. Well, they're not going to show their games here. But they're the ones that are responsible for the Assassin's Creed series. And they do most of them. As you see right here. 2002, Splinter Cell, Prince of Persia, which actually is the foundation of Assassin's Creed. And developing its own intellectual property such as Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Watch Dogs, For Honor. So this is the important part of Ubisoft. They got over 4,000 employees. But let's get back to this video.
Instance, AC Valhalla using Christian stave churches from the 1200s to depict Norse pagan temples in the 800s is incorrect, anachronistic, and dishonest, smushing time, aesthetics, and two entirely separate religions into one messy representation.
They did do
Thankfully,
that.
nothing in Mirage is ever that flagrant, but one design choice does warrant discussion, namely how this imperial capital of Baghdad acts as a microcosm of the entire medieval Islamic world. We see that in people, languages, and goods coming from all over, but this also comes through in the world of the city itself, which features some fundamentally impossible inclusions, like West African minarets, Iberian tile work, Iranian mosques, bazaars, and rugs, Central Asian tombs, some pretty Taj Mahal-ish looking domes, and several disparate architectural influences on the House of Wisdom.
That's okay.
Of course, Baghdad is famously lost, so we can't bring the contradicting evidence to say J'accuse, but we can be pretty confident that these elements didn't show up until a good ways later, and not in Baghdad. On paper, these kinds of inclusions are inaccurate and contribute to the sense of a timeless Uchronia, but are they dishonest? Depends on the intent and the effect on the player. Lead historian Raphael Whelan described it as filling in the blanks, reaching out laterally to other corners of the Islamic world to create a believable composite picture. And just looking metatextually, Mirage is basically the one chance for a mega-budget game to...
So you can't say that those little parts are not historically accurate, but at the same time, he says we just have to fill in the blanks, and they did the best that they could. So they're still not being intellectually dishonest, and they're being straightforward about it right here. There's no hidden agendas here. They did what they really could with this game, and they're trying to make it as historically accurate as possible. A lot of Assassin's Creed games are done like this, literally, the whole entire series.
To showcase Muslim culture at this scale and fidelity, so it gives a fire hose blast of cultural riches from Iberia, Africa, Iraq, Persia, and Central Asia, with the understanding that if they don't get their spotlight here, it may never happen. So yeah, it's inaccurate, but we'll see in a minute how this game is far more poetic and folkloric than strictly historical, so assembling elements from across Islam into one city captures the feeling of Baghdad as the capital of that world. Mirage does not show how Baghdad looked, but what Baghdad meant, and I have to respect that choice. Additionally, religion in this game is handled surprisingly well. Nothing revolutionary, but it avoids the constant nasty attitude this series has had towards religion since the edgy enlightened atheist days of AC1. Here in Mirage, we see mosques all over the city, accompanied by fountains and lush gardens. We hear the call to prayer during the day, and points of interest like the Nestorian Christian monastery up north show the diversity of religious life within the Abbasid world. There's a real love for the variety of people who called this city home during the Golden Age, and we can actually hear that in the various languages spoken by background characters. In addition to Arabic, there's Persian, Chinese, Hebrew, and Greek. When we're looking at the people in the game and the worlds they inhabit, there's genuinely so much to appreciate about this depiction of Baghdad. The plot, however, stumbles.
So as you see, they did a really good job with religious accuracy, which is very important in the Islamic culture and in the Arabic society. Incredibly important. You have to make that be authentic because it matters. And they made sure to do that. And represent that, which is historically accurate, and putting the mixture of other cultures to an extent too that kind of, they mixed and mashed with.
A bit. The game takes place during the anarchy at Samarra, a real historical crisis following the death of Caliph al-Mutawakkil.
A real historical crisis following the death of Caliph al-Mutawakkil,
with the ensuing factional rivalries causing a massive long-term impact on the Abbasid Caliphate. The concept in the lead-in is pretty cool, but the game only vaguely gestures at the political factions at play and what's happening in the city as a result. On paper, there's a strong case to be made for Basim feeling guilty about the current state of affairs, but the story does not engage with that, and it feels like the dastardly Order of the Ancients was already in control of everything anyway. Overall, the political history here is definitely the weakest link. For instance, the first assassination sequence in Harbia has a whole plotline about freeing the rebel leader Ali of the Zand Rebellion, yet does not at any point show what even the basic idea of the revolution is. It was an uprising of enslaved East Africans, called Zanj in Arabic, seeking to end their oppression and enslavement in the Caliphate and toppling what they viewed as the oppressive authority of the Caliph. But the game...
That's very true, because the original slavery of Africa, I don't know if a lot of people know this, still misinformed about it today because they always blame the whites, is the African people, their own elite tribes sold their own kind to the Arabs. That's how they originally went into slavery. This also goes back to disobeying the Creator too, and not sticking together and being a family and multiplying and being fruitful. you know, messing around with like, you know, witchcraft, you know, you had like witch doctors, cannibalism, eating their own children. They just got into a whole bunch of dark arts, and you wonder how they did that. Well, they're messing around with outside forces, which they shouldn't have from the underworld. But then, you know, it goes to selling my own kind in slavery. And then there's a lot of people that want to complain and start saying, yeah, but did you see, you know, what they did over there to the Americans? I was like, it doesn't matter. If you would have never sold them, that would have never happened. It starts there. The biggest evil is selling your own people and not taking care of them. And somebody else coming over, giving them a better life than you ever have. That's a shame. You shouldn't have never done that. And then you saying that they stole everything, and it's like, no, they didn't. It was buying and selling. They the people over here from the American society, which is way after you sold them into slavery, you know, they're capitalists, so they're all about buying and selling. And the Arabs sold them to the Caucasians from America, which invaded the native territories and built and established America from Rome. You see what I mean? It's not like America was native lands. No, it's what's built on top of native lands. So they came in and colonized because of what the natives were doing, and they disobeyed too. So it's like you got these native tribes that lost their native link to the creator. And then you can kind of say, we lost our magical protection. It's all in games, you know. It's not just physical. No, you see it in every RPG. You have the physical and the elemental or the spiritual protection. And a lot of people in this world are out of touch with that, so they only think there's just physical protection. That's why you got to get in touch with the spirit, because if you don't have their protection, then those evil spirits come in and they wreck everything. And that's what they're doing in this world right now. They're all in front of you. Everybody knows it. But they just don't know how to. Some people just probably don't. So you got some people that really don't believe, but they know that there's something going on, but they just don't know what it is. But it's there. But let's get back to this though. That was just to highlight a little bit on historical accuracy and what they're talking about here between the Arabs and the Africans and that original slave deal. Oh yeah.
Game does not engage with that premise at all. A huge wasted opportunity. Strictly speaking, the rebellion didn't start for another 8 years, but that's such a small time gap, I fully do not care.
That's alright.
I'm more disappointed that they went through the effort to include the Zanj and yet not examine it. The first major arc of the game feels like, oh my god, the Caliph is dead and everything's in crisis, but the player thinks, really? Feels like the Order is only slightly more in control than they were already. And the game says, anyway, go kill this slaver Al Ghul. Then the game says, here's the leader of the Zanj Rebellion, and the player thinks, what is the Zanj Rebellion? And the game says, anyway, go kill Al Ghul. It's a letdown. But while the plot never sticks the landing, which is absolutely what I was bracing for in the lead up to this game, the overall tone is actually quite clever in a really surprising way. Mirage is a very bookish game, taking heavy influence from Arabic and Persian poetry and folklore. It can be hard to see if you're not looking for it, but the ways the characters talk to each other, read each other, pray for each other even, it's very steeped in the Islamic literature of the period. In stories like 1001 Nights, characters who reunite after a long absence will stop dead in their tracks to recite prayers and poetry for 50 lines at least. Early in Mirage, Basim has a
That's very important in that culture. Like I said, to keep the spiritual barrier, to pray for somebody and to send that positive energy. I don't know if y'all know, but if you look into hospital records and history, people that have been through chaotic situations and people that were on their deathbed, it shows historically that the people that were prayed for had a way higher chance of recovering, and that's historically recorded, and you can go look through that if you guys ever want to look through that. Families that have prayed for people in the hospital have had a much higher recovery rate for people who had no prayers for them at all, because this is about that energy and that love sending out. And we have to think about death itself as a spirit as well too. It is. And everybody is, you know, this is all temporary. But we're not going to get too far into that. But it's nice to know that they're doing that. And you see, this is all historical accuracy.
reunion that nods towards this tradition in a way that doesn't shatter the pacing. Basim's story overall flows more like a folktale than a grounded history, and this is more or less in line with how the last few games have handled their narratives. So while the historical, let's call it nutritional value, is lacking from the story in Mirage,
So he's saying that when it comes to the story, the historical accuracy is not what he wanted it to be, but it is a poetic flow. But the game itself has a lot of historical accuracy in architecture, design, the way people pray, and do all those sorts of things. But he would have liked to see better historical accuracy in the story. Obviously, we could see that here.
the literary flavor is at least there. I'll be less generous to Basim's outfits and weapons, as those are your typical exaggerated.
And if y'all don't know who Basim is, he plays a very important part of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I've beaten. I have around almost 120 hours in. I loved Basim. I wanted to know more about his story. So if all of you have beaten Assassin's Creed Valhalla, remember, this is a successor to it. And they're linked historically to each other. So this gives his background. He was a character that was included in there big time. As a matter of fact, there's a interconnection also between Cassandra as well, who comes from Odyssey, that links into this. And then it goes to Basim and all that. They kind of have a link. You'll start to see that in the open world environment.
The video game fare. It doesn't fall victim to all-out Orientalism, but it gets pretty damn goofy in a couple places. There's the indication of actual medieval weapons and costumes under there, but they're clearly playing it up for the aesthetic, and by this point, I know better than to die on that hill. By contrast, most if not all of the lootable inventory items are actual museum pieces, with extra written descriptions for the lost books and artifact quest items. They didn't need to do that, but it shows how wide-reaching the Islamic world truly was, so I'm super...
You see that? Real historical museum accuracy here. And this is the director that made sure that happened. To make sure that it was very, very true to the Islamic world. You see, man, why couldn't they do this for Japan? Man, they could have.
We're glad they did. Similarly, the game's codex entries are frankly fantastic. Rather than exclusively talking about places and people like previous games' database entries, these cover a huge range of topics in society, art, culture, and daily life. They're cleverly written with publication-quality images because most of them are literally sourced from museums, and as the game's main collectibles scattered across points of interest on the map, they're genuinely fun to track down.
So, you see, this is based off of museum historical accuracy, all those artifacts in this game. Once again, we could see what Assassin's Creed is about. Big time. Of course, you're going to have your little bit of fiction in there too, but they have a lot of historical accuracy, all of them.
I liked the discovery tours from Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, but these codex entries are in the main game and lightweight enough that casual players will actually engage with them. Video Game Donkey actually enjoyed reading them, so Baghdad acts as a compelling playable museum. That was always the goal with these games, but with an overwhelming volume of historical resources so lovingly shown in the game, Mirage finally lands it. So where does all of that leave us? At its heart, this depiction is still fundamentally a game and not an educational exhibit, but it's made with an enthusiasm and care that I genuinely did not think possible in a mass-market video game from Ubisoft. But here I am, surprised and damn impressed. This isn't a game about what was happening to the Abbasid Caliphate in 861, this is a game about Baghdad in the golden age of Islam, and in that, it succeeds. Thank you so much for watching. I'd like to thank our buddy Adam, aka Ludo History.
So yeah, he said he was kind of blown away by how good they did this. And they didn't just make it to where it's like a boring history lesson you're going through. They actually made it into a video game at the same time. So it had that perfect blend of historical accuracy and being a video game at the same time. So there y'all have it. You see what I mean? And there's other videos I can cover too, just to show you about the historical realism, of this game. So if we go over here too, I'm not gonna do this yet, but you see historical realism, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I can click right on it.
A new Assassin's Creed.
Historical realism, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So this guy does a really good job of explaining that in these games. And there you have it. All y'all talking about Assassin's Creed is not historically accurate. What are you talking about? A lot of games are. Big time. So, there you have it. Alright, y'all. Like, subscribe if y'all like this type of content. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments below. Like I said, if you guys want me to do certain type of games, let me know. Comment. I'll be glad to cover them. Alright, y'all. Peace out.